What is up, you guys? So today we are coming back to the Win Freelance Jobs series here. We're going to show that we are a low risk hire, make it really easy for people to pick us for their freelance project. So how are we going to do that? We're going to build with the required tech stack. So I'm doing this in real time. So someone reached out to me and they have a job that requires this tech stack: Airflow, Docker, object-oriented Python, and AWS. So what my plan is to build a sample app that incorporates all of these technologies together. So the game plan, and we're going to do this in steps. We're not going to try and build the whole thing to start. We're going to build something small and manageable because I don't know all this technology. So I'm going to be learning it along the way. And just doing small bite-sized steps to make it manageable. So the first step is we just want to connect to the Twitter API. We want to get some kind of a response, and then when we do, we're going to say, okay, that's a success. Then once we do that, we're going to make it pretty. We're going to take our functional code and reformat it into classes, and that's essentially what object-oriented programming is. After that, we're going to incorporate Airflow to rerun the Twitter scrapes on a weekly basis. And we're going to use Docker to make deployment super simple. And if there's time, we're going to deploy it to AWS. Deploying on your personal computer, if you're on Linux or deploying to your personal computer, it's a little bit different compared to deploying on AWS, but it's about 80% of the way. So if you can do it on your computer, you're very close to doing it on a cloud service like AWS. So stretch goal is to deploy on AWS, but personal computer is fine too. So okay, let's just review what this Twitter app will do. Example app, so Twitter app. So the goal is we're going to make an app that let me show you guys just on Twitter. I think that'll be easier. Let's see. Attention. All right. Just get that. I'll refresh. Okay. So a popular way to add value to people on Twitter is to take a popular account like Naval Ravikant or Paul Graham, grab all of his tweets and sift through them and find the most popular ones and kind of summarize that for people. So rather than someone having to go read through 1,000 or more tweets from someone that they want to get to know better, someone can come in, do that for them, synthesize everything, and create a Twitter thread. And so people get a lot of value out of that, and the person that creates it gets a lot of followers. So I'm going to try and simplify that a little bit. So let me just show you. Let's look up Paul Graham. And let's look at what we would be doing if we had to do this manually. So if I want to go and grab all of Paul Graham's tweets, I have to go to his page and just copy and paste everything. So that's going to take a lot of time, right? Oops. Yeah, so if you're in here and you're just copying and pasted, Control C, Control V, that's going to take a long time. So the value here is connecting to the Twitter API. So that's what we're going to do. Okay. So there's this version 2. Let's see here. All right, let's try getting started. Okay, we want to do Twitter API set of programming endpoints that can be used to learn from and engage with the conversation. That sounds like what we want to do. So let's try to get started for the Twitter API. Okay, so we want tweets. So we want to search for recent tweets. We don't want a specific tweet. Okay. Okay. And this is, again, this is great practice, reading the documentation. So technology is changing so often that the best source for learning about a technology is reading the documentation, because that's the most likely to be current, to be updated. So looks like we get access to tweets posted over the last week. So we want to do, this is our use case, is providing fundamental research data. In this case on Paul Graham, when I grab his tweets. So we get 100 tweets per request. Reverse chronological order, which means we get his most recent tweet first and his oldest tweet last. Okay, so we have to authenticate. So there's two use cases: get historical, request for a period of interest, no focus on real-time nature. Yeah, we don't want anything real-time. Single request is made, all matching data is delivered. Okay, so it looks like we're gonna do get historical. This polling or listening is for grabbing tweets as they're being posted. We don't want that. Tweet attributes will include Twitter annotations. So if we do expansions author ID, we can pick up information about that user, like their bio or their number of followers. So it looks like they have only a recent search version, and eventually you'll be able to get the whole. So we'll get all of Paul Graham's tweets from the first time he tweeted. Currently it looks like we can only get his tweets from a week prior. So that's where Airflow comes in. We can set up a job on Airflow that every single week it pulls the last week's tweets, and then we can build that, we can add that to our database. Then over time we'll have this big data set of Paul Graham's tweets. Okay, so here's the steps. We need to get an approved developer account. You got to activate the new developer portal. Okay, so let's do getting started. Okay, so we have to apply for a developer portal, developer account. So I've already done this, but you'll have to go ahead and go in. You might have a project already made, but you might have to make one yourself, and then make an app. So I'm calling mine Wisdom to Sheet. So the idea is that someone could tweet. They could say, "Hey, I want to do a summary of Paul Graham's tweets," and eventually the goal is you just tweet Wisdom to Sheet, and it'll respond with a link for you to just download a CSV of Paul Graham's top 100 tweets all time. So that'd be pretty cool. So that's the goal here. Okay, we'll get to this if we have time. So again, this is the main goal here. We just want to connect to the Twitter API today. Okay, so get yourself set up with an app in the Twitter developer portal. What's next? Save your app's key and tokens. Okay, so I've done this before. Don't show anyone else your key and their token, because that could, like, if you have a paid account, someone else could be using your paid account and run up a big bill for you. So keep your keys, your API key and secret to yourself. And if you ever are unsure, so I'm going to show you guys my API key, but that's okay because you can just click regenerate. If you regenerate your configuration, you might have to update your code. So in case you're not sure whether your key is safe or not, you can just regenerate it, and then your old key will no longer work. So that's why it's okay if I show you guys my key here. I'm just going to regenerate it after or before posting this video. So go ahead and save. Yeah, we'll need these. So let's go ahead and save these. So we're going to call this plan.md. So go ahead and make a new directory. So on Windows, you can do this in either Git Bash or WSL, Windows Subsystem for Linux. And if you're on Mac, just use your regular terminal. Okay, so make dir Twitter API freelance project. I like to make a descriptive name so that I know what I was doing. You know, if I come back to this a week or 2 weeks or a month from now, I want to know, oh, what was I doing here? Oh, I was making a freelance project with the Twitter API. Okay, so we're going to make a file called credentials.py, and we're going to say API key is equal to this, and API key secret, API key secret equals. Okay, so go ahead and save that. Cool. Yes, I saved them. All right, what's next? Save your app's key and tokens, keep them secure. Yeah, so here's when you regenerate, it invalidates your old keys. So use that regenerate button liberally if you're worried about whether someone else has your keys. Okay, step 3, set up our access. Okay, so this, I'm not sure how long this takes. It might take 24 hours, 48 hours. So if you started this and you're waiting to hear back, just pause the video and you can come back to it when your account is approved. All right, I use an existing app. All right. Step 5, make your first request. Okay, how to analyze a user's request. Sounds like what we want to do. All right. Explore users' tweets. Okay, so we got to get a bearer token. How do we get that? Huh. Let's keep reading. Yeah, so eventually with wisdom to sheet, if someone tweets wisdom to sheet with @PaulG, then we want to pull Paul G's top 100 tweets and make a downloadable link and respond with the link. Okay, so next step is we need to get our bearer token. So we want to do bearer token. Okay. So we need to generate this type of request. We can do this with Python, with Bash, Python and Bash, or Ruby or JavaScript, whatever you know. So we're going to try and do Python, but we're going to fall back to Bash. And so this is the response you'll get if we do it successfully. Okay. So it needs to be a post. So we could try and implement this algorithm. So it's giving us a little algorithm here for how to do it. We could try to do that ourselves, but let's not reinvent the wheel here. I think someone's probably done this before. So Twitter bearer token. Obtaining access tokens. Three-legged OAuth. Okay, that's not what we want. So let's search GitHub. So if you get a little site and then colon, it'll search only github.com. Okay, get bearer token. Okay, so this is using JavaScript. Let's see if we can find Python. Here we go. Okay, cool. So we'll just use someone else's work. There's no need to. Okay, so let's vim bearer token. Get bearer token. Let's just call it bearer token.py. Well, yeah, I guess we're getting the bearer token. Okay. Let's go ahead and paste that in there. Okay. Delete this. So this is for Python 2. We don't need that. Okay. So base64 request urlive.parse. And then this is the URL that we'll send our request to. Okay, so it looks like what happens here, we input our consumer key and our secret. So that's our API key and our API key secret. So we encode the consumer key, encode the secret, create a bearer token, base64 encode, set headers, do a post request, get the Json response, to JSON. Oh, okay. Okay, fairly simple. So rather than doing this input, we're just going to we're going to import our keys from a file that we saved them in. And so we just do import credentials. And just so we can give you a look, see what that looks like. So first let's save that, and then we're going to open up the credentials. And so what happens is when we import this, it makes these two variables accessible. And so what we can do is we can do, we can just say credentials and then the variable name, and that's going to be available. So let's try running this to see what happens. Python 3 get bearer token. Okay, so that worked. So you can just do that one more time and do a greater than arrow and say bearer token. Well, if you do two arrows, that's going to append. You can append this to the end of credentials. We can open up credentials. Okay, so we don't need this or this. And we're going to call it bearer token. You need to put it in quotation marks because it's a string. Move my head. So just put it in quotation marks like that. Save it. Okay, so we've got our bearer token. Cat credentials. We've got our bearer token. Cool. That was pretty easy. Yeah, don't be afraid to don't try and reinvent the wheel all the time. Okay, cool. So we've got our bearer token. Obtain our bearer token. Done. Okay. All right. Okay, let's try this query right here. Let's see if we can get. Let's see if we can. So our goal is just to start talking to the API. All right. All right. We'll make a file. Twitter API.py. We're going to import our credentials because we're going to need our bearer token. Credentials. Start off with the trustee. If name equals main. Call Twitter search. Def Twitter search. Okay. We'll give it a URL. So URL equals this. Okay, so we need requests. Import requests. Let's do so we need to add our bearer token to the header. So how do we do that? Oh, okay. So it's called authorization. The key, and then the value is bearer. And then we're going to do credentials, bearer token. We need to make this an F string. Cool. So I think that should work. Let's see here. We're going to do response JSON equals requests.get URL headers equals headers. I believe it's headers. Requests. I will just run it and see if it gives us an error. And we can update it if needed. Okay. And we want to print. Let's pretty print. Import pprint. Pprint. This is going to format the JSON, make it a little bit easier to read. We're going to pretty print the response JSON. Okay. Alright, let's try that. So save that, and type Python 3 Twitter API. See what happens. Response 401. Interesting. 401 Twitter. What does that mean? Twitter error. Unauthorized. So maybe we did something wrong with our bearer token. Interesting. Okay. All right, let's try to get our bearer token again. Python 3 bearer token, get bearer token. We're gonna append it to the end of credentials. Then open up credentials. Okay. I mean, these look the same. Huh. Python 3 Twitter API. And we get a 401. Interesting. Huh. Gotta do some debugging. Status code. It's probably gonna be the same thing. 401. Okay. Huh. Author bearer token. Maybe I might be calling the header incorrectly. Let's see. So this right here, this allows us to set a breakpoint and take a look at like what does headers look like at this point. So type this in right after. Let's see what happens here. Python 3 Twitter API. Okay, so let's print. If you type p headers, you can see what that. Oh, what? See, this should be our bearer token. Huh. Interesting. Let's do this. Python 3, Twitter API. Print. We're going to print credentials, bearer token. Huh. What's going on here? Oh, look what we did, guys. So we put the F on the wrong string. Okay. All right. F. Put it on the wrong string. Okay, let's put on that one, and that should work. Delete your debug statements. Let's try this again. Oh, and here's a cool little trick. So if you type pound exclamation point /user /bin /env python3, we can make this a little bit easier to call. So chmod plus x, which means executable, Twitter. And if you see it changed the color to show that now that it's an executable file. Now it's a little bit easier to call. We can just type that instead of python3 Twitter. So it just makes it a little bit faster to run your program. Let's see what happens. Hey, we got a 200, which is success. Now let's take a look. We don't want the status code. We want we just want the JSON. JSON. There we go. Let's run it again. Hey, wait, hold on. Vim Twitter. Oh, okay. We gotta call it JSON. That'll give us the JSON. There we go. All right, you guys. So we have started talking to the Twitter API. That's cool. All right. Abort. FG. Okay. So we're talking to the Twitter API. All right. Now what do we want to do? We want to get Paul G. So let's get Paul G. Paul G. And what else do we want to do? We want to save Paul G's tweets to the database. We want to save it to a Postgres database. Okay, so just type in install Postgres QL. Go to downloads and pick your respective one. So for me that'll be Linux, but if you're on Windows, you just follow the Windows directions or Mac OS directions. And actually I did this on video for Linux, so if you're interested in watching that, I'll leave a link down below. So to make sure that you have your Linux, your Postgres server is running, type ls space pg ls pg underscore ls clusters. And if yours is online, if yours is working correctly, it'll say online on this status right here. So once you get Postgres installed, this check shows that you did it all correctly. Okay, so how do we talk to Postgres? Okay, so we're going to use SQL Alchemy. We want to use Postgres. We're just going to use psychopg too. Okay. So we need this connection string, which will be different depending on which, like if you're doing a MySQL database, it would be a little bit different. So Postgres, okay. Okay, this is what we want. Call this the connection string. and Twitter API. Connection string. Okay, user. So the default user in Postgres is just Postgres. And you can go in and change the password, and so you have to set a password, I believe. I'm fairly certain you need to set a password in order to access it. So how do you set a password? Sudo u postgres user, type psql postgres set password. Yeah, so just do the Google search, postgres set password, and just, let's see, we're going to follow these instructions. Switch to the root user. Okay, so log into psql like this, type in your password. Okay, so now we're in the Postgres user, so /password Postgres. Okay, so then that's how you, and so here's how you set the password, and you can just type it in. I'm doing Postgres. Okay, cool. You can exit. Okay, cool. So user is going to be Postgres, password, Postgres. It's going to be localhost, port, and so use this port, PG LS clusters. So it's port 5432. Okay. Port 5432, and then we can just do any database we want. Let's call it tweets. Make a tweets database. Okay. So this is our connection string. Okay, let's go back to the general. Looking if they give us an example. Okay. Did they give us a good example here? PG 8000. Okay, this isn't super great. So we're going to go back to the general SQL Alchemy tutorial and just try and adapt it to our use case for Postgres. Okay. Okay. So we're going, excuse me, copy and paste here. Engine, create engine, and then we put in, this is going to be our connection string. So you could use a SQLite database, MySQL, whatever database you're using. You enter your own connection string in this first variable, and then this echo equals true. That's gonna print out what the actual SQL statements look like when we're using this. Okay, declare mapping base, declarative base, copy and paste. Okay. First step is to make it run. It's going to be ugly, but then we'll make it pretty. Okay. Copy and paste. Okay, let's call this def SQL alchemy example, just to not clutter us up too much. Okay. Let's keep all this stuff in here too. You're putting a class inside a function. That's what we're doing today. Okay. Create a schema. Okay, so let's try and print user.table. Let's see if we can do that. Okay, so we're going to run SQL. So we're gonna run the SQL alchemy example, and hopefully we get to print out this. This is hopefully what we get. Let's give it a shot. So save that, run it. Users. We got users. Interesting. Huh. So it told us the name. Huh. Oh, I guess we didn't set full name or nickname, but we had the user's table name, so I guess it just grabbed that. Interesting. So this is the result we got. We just got it. Just printed out users, the name of the table. It's interesting. Okay. Okay, let's try this now. So it looks like create all, it creates the table users and then commits it to our Postgres database. Okay, so let's see if we can get that running. So erase that. And so because we have on echo equals true, we don't need to print anything. It's just gonna show us what the SQL commands are. So save that, run it. Uh-oh. Okay. Tweets does not exist. Huh. How do we create the database? Oh, so we're doing something separate here. So engine. So they're using a SQLite one. How do we use a Postgres one? That's the question. Okay. What we can do is we can say psychopg database does not exist. Okay, let's try that. Psychopg to database does not exist. Because we're probably not the first one to have this error. Okay. The question I'm asking myself, does this person have the same problem as me? So I'm reading his question. So he is getting the same error, he's just doing things in a separate way. So we're using SQL Alchemy and he's just using the command line tool. So it's a little bit different, but like we should have like the same kind of solution. So what does the error say? It says database does not exist. So we can just create the database. So let's do sudo u postgres. And there's this create db command. So man create db. So let's create a new postgres QL database. It's a command line function, command line tool. So we just say create db, db name, and then it's going to create that database. Alright, so let's try that. So sudo user postgres create db. We want to create the tweets database. Okay, so it looks like that was successful. So let's try rerunning our, so we didn't change anything. So no changes, except we made the database, and let's see if it runs now. Okay, so it created this users table. Cool. Yeah, so sometimes you can psych yourself out and say, oh, it was actually a simple answer, but maybe you think it's more complicated than it is. So it said the error was database does not exist. And we just made the database, and then I made it work. Okay, moving on. Declare mapping, create a schema. Okay, so this is the last one we ran. Minimum table, okay. Full, wait, what is this? Minimal table descriptors versus full descriptions. Okay, we don't need that. Okay, so let's make this guy add user, and then maybe we can we'll make, yeah, okay. And then maybe we can, so we'll make a user and let's see if we can just print and see what happens. Okay, let's try that. Okay, cool. So we make this add user. Cool. And so what did it do? It shows the SQL as well. Okay. Not exactly sure. It's okay. So if we've created a user, we haven't saved him to the database though. Okay. The next question is how do we save him to the database? So create a session. We're now ready to start talking to the database. The ORM's handle to the database is the session. When we first set up the application at the same level as our create engine statement, we define a session class which will serve as a factory for new session objects. Okay, so copy this. All right. Put this up here. Oops. We got this session maker. We created a session, excuse me. Okay, let's move this down here. All right, it's a little bit easier. Okay. So copy this, session equals session maker. Wait, what? I'm ready to start talking to a database. Oh, okay, so these are two different ways of doing the same thing. So we don't need that. Okay, so we use a session to have a conversation with the database. Hey database, save ed user. Oops. Okay. It's like our telephone to call the database. Okay. Session.add ed user. And then I believe it's going to be session.commit. Let's see. Not yet. So let's comment that out. Let's see what happens when we print our user. So what happens what is our user? So we're going to query user, the user class. We're going to filter by their name is equal to ed. And in this case, ed user, his name is equal to ed. And we want to grab the first result. So that should return ed user. So let's see what happens. Save that. Let's run it. Okay. So it's returning. So that means that we have it's successfully talking to the database. Okay. Cool. All right. What's next? Okay, so we can add a bunch of users at the same time. Let's try this. Let's try that. So programming, the way you learn is just by trial and error. So we put this code in and we see how it affects things, and that's a really good way to remember how to do stuff. Okay. Right. Let's try and get all users. So how do we do that? All, oops. users, session.query user. Let's just try and comment out the so hopefully this prints out all the users. Let's see what happens here. So save that, let's run it. Okay, let's see what happened. So it spit out Ed. Limit param1. So limit, and then it's going to substitute 1. So limit means it's only going to return 1. Interesting. So how do we print all of them? Oh, here's how we do it. Okay. So let's try this. Okay, let's try this. Okay. Cool. So that's how we print all the names. We have to use this. So we tried just doing this. Just sessions.query user, and that's not enough. You have to have the order by. And that allows you to grab every single one of them. Cool. All right. What else? So now, how can we adapt this to tweets? So we created a user class, but we want to create a tweet class, because we're going to get, when we call the Twitter API, it's going to return tweets to us. So let's try and make a Twitter class. Okay. Let's make it class tweet, and then base, okay, table name, equals, so our database is called tweets. It shouldn't be a problem if we call our table tweets too. Okay, so it's going to have an ID. Let's just copy 21. Okay, it's going to ID and text. It's going to be a string. Oh, so we're going to get the ID of the tweet and the text. Okay. Integer, I think we're going to make this a string. Okay. This is not a primary key. Okay. Oh, so we saved all like Bob and Harry. So look at this. So sudo u postgres. We want to get tweets. Huh. Oh, pSQL. Sorry. Type pSQL. And then we want to open the tweets database. So select star from tweets. Oh, we got the users table. Okay, so select star from users. Oh, interesting. Okay, there's nothing in there. So we're going to drop table users. We don't need that. Cool. And then just exit. Okay. So we want to copy this stuff. So it's a SQL Alchemy example. Now we're going to do def SQL Alchemy Twitter example. Okay. And we just want to do this, we just want to copy what we did up here for this user case. We want to just do tweets. Okay. We just copy this whole thing. Okay. Add user. Missed that one. Okay, so we've copied it. Now we need to, let's adapt this to a tweet. So let's say Paul G tweet equals tweet. And the ID, wait. Sorry about all the running around. Okay, just making sure I got this all correct. Okay. Metadata create all, that's going to create the tweet database. Tweet? Oh, table name, yeah, tweets. So it's going to create this tweets table. Okay. Create all creates the table. And now we're going to create this tweet. ID, we don't need to give it an ID, it'll do that on its own. Give it some text. Example, Paul G tweet. Okay, so this should work. Session add Paul G tweet. Our tweet make that a little bigger. Query, and we want to query tweet. Filter by text equals, oh man. Let's do an author. Add an author field. So column string author equals Paul G. So we're going to filter by author equals Paul G. Okay, we want to grab the first one. We want to print our tweet. Okay, let's try that. So just comment out this stuff. Okay, so our goal, so we're creating, let me just recap here. We're going to create this Paul G. So we're going to run this this function. it's going to create the tweets table. Sorry, forgot to do this. Tweet. You wanna text author. Text author. Okay. Yeah, okay. So it's going to create the tweets table. We're creating this tweet. We're going to add it to the session, which is our telephone that's talking to our Postgres database. Okay. We're going to query our database for a tweet by Paul G, and then we're going to print it out and see what happens. So let's save that, and then let's call this function. SQL Twitter example. Save that. Let's run it. Uh-oh. Okay. What was the error? Integrity error. Not null violation. Null value in column ID. Okay. So we got a null value. We don't want that. Why is it null? Okay, so we gotta debug this error. Why is it giving a null value for ID? Huh. Not sure. Integrity error. So it's not an error with SQL Alchemy, but it's a psychopg error. So let's take a look at what is it saying. What is psychopg saying? Errors not null. Null value in column ID. That's really strange. Failing row contains null example. Oh, okay. Alright, so what if we just set the ID value? Say ID equals 0. And it's a string 0. Let's try that. Okay, so that worked. Cool. So here's our tweet. We've made a tweet. Example Paul G tweet by Paul G. Paul G, the legend. All right. All right, we're making some progress. Now the idea is when we call, so we've successfully called the Twitter search here. The goal is when we get we get back this JSON of a bunch of tweets. We want to add them to our database. We did this simple example, but now we know how to make it a little bit more complex and see how we can add these guys to our database. Okay, so how can we do that? So we get a response. What was the output? So Twitter dev. Apology. Okay, so this is the output we get here. Wait. Okay, so this is what the JSON looks like. Okay, so let's save that. Let's see if we can save that. Cat example Json response. Let's try and save that. Example. Okay, so has a data element, a data key, and a meta key. All of the tweets are within the data key. Okay. So we want to grab the ID and the text and save those to our database. Okay. You want a vertical split, Twitter, abort, quit, FG, split, example. Whoa, what is going on there? I believe it's being pretty printed. Okay. It's a little bit hard to see, but we'll make do. Okay, let's close this out. Okay. All right, so what do we want to do? So we got this response.json. So we're going to reuse, what are we going to reuse? So we're going to reuse all this. Oops. No. Yeah. We want to session add. We want to grab the tweets and session.add all of the tweets. So first let's try so our goal is to grab the tweets. We get a response JSON. We need to pull out the undo. We need to pull out the text and the author and the ID. In this case, we know the author because we're calling for Paul G's tweets. So we can set them all to Paul G. So we need to pull out the ID and the text. And that looks like, just to remind you, example. So we have this ID here, and we have the text. So we need to pull these two items out of there. Okay. We'll just forget about this for now. We don't need the meta. Okay. We're going to reuse this tweet guy. Okay. Okay. Okay, so we're going to make a function. It's going to be called start db database session, which is how we talk to our database. What? Okay. Okay, so how do we do that? How do we start the database? We get this. Grab that. Put that here. So base needs to be here. And we need to make a session and then return the session. And then we'll be able to use session.add. Okay. Then we're going to return session. So this is one step unnecessary. You just go like this. So it's going to start a database session and return it. So we can do something like session equals start db session. Okay. Okay, so let's try and run this, and let's just try and save what we get back. So how do we pull, right? How do we pull this data? So okay, so it looks like it's a list. It's going to be a list because it's those list brackets, not the squiggly ones. So this one right here, that's a list bracket, and then this is a dictionary bracket. Two different kinds. Okay. All right. So tweet objects equals response JSON. Grab data. Excuse me. Okay, so for object in tweet objects, we want to tweet. We got to make a tweet equals tweet ID equals object ID. Oops. Yeah, object ID and object text. Okay. Text. And then author. No, the author is Paul G. Okay. And then we want a session dot add tweet. Okay. And then we want to print them out and make sure that we're getting it correctly. So how do we print out? 78 and 79. Yank those. Okay. For instance, so search for a user, replace that with tweet. Order by tweet ID, no problem. We want to print instance dot text. Let's do text and ID because we know it's going to be Paul G. Let's do ID and text. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Now we're going to run main. Let's run this. Oops. All right. Wait. Did that work? All right. You guys. We've done it. Okay, so this is the tweet ID, and this is the text. Nice, guys. All right. How about that? That's pretty cool. Okay. Now the question is, I believe we have to do session.commit and session.close, and then that should save it. That should save it in the Postgres database. So the way we can check is we can run this again, then we'll go into pSQL, and we'll just check in there and see if we got it. So let's save that, run it. Okay, now we want to go into pSQL, user Postgres, pSQL tweets. Okay, we're going to select star from tweets. Whoa, guys, I think we did it. All right. All right, and another cool thing you can do. How do you do that back? Forward. Oops. You can do count. You can count everything and see what's in there. See how much, like the number. Okay, so we got 10. Guys, we have connected to Postgres and saved tweets from the Twitter API. All right. Awesome. Exit. Cool. All right. Good job, guys. Let's see. Plan. Let's open the plan. Okay. So we connect to the Twitter API. We did this. We can put this a plus. Okay. It is ugly. Now we gotta make it object oriented. Make it pretty. And stick around. That'll be the next episode. So good job, guys. We made an ugly connection to the Twitter, but it works, and we're gonna make it pretty in the next one. So I will see you guys in the next video.